Okay, that was so much fun. That was so much fun the last time doing that. I'm going to do it again, this problem on 8-4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draft it up in isometric just so you can kind of once again see. And then I'm going to do this twisting down, if you would, shifting things back. So we're going to remember, of course, we want to start with the correct template. So remember going File. Again, I'm in an old version of AutoCAD here, so knowing where my stuff is at. So decimal feet works for me. Again, I am not drafting the way you all are drafting, so right away, really starting up and getting your layers, I'm going to lay them out. I'm going to start here. I'm going to just say ISO drawing. Okay, so I remember fold lines, and I want that, of course, to be, I said yellow in the past, and then in addition to that, projection lines, and we've been doing that with something in that color range. And keeping track here that you're kind of keeping track when you're creating layers here. I can actually go to here, right click and delete the layer. Don't need that layer. You could go back and delete some of these other layers, but right now I'm just going to go ahead and go on the ISO drawing layer. I'm going to go and set that up. And that said, remember, even though there's the thing of the ISO snaps, this was a great way to do shift right click, object snap settings, and go to the polar tracking and set just these angles, which are up 30, 150, 210, and 330, and 90 degrees up. So that when I do here, I don't necessarily have to do I insert and bring in a unit fee box. Remember the unit fee box? Remember it was close to this. I can go ahead, I've lost my drawing, but I can go ahead and change this first to view. Rectangle. That's that idea of at 1.62 comma 1, that sense that yes, it's amazing. Phi is also used to scale up kilometers to miles. I'll just make it 6 times larger, and I'm going to go ahead and make it once again left click spacebar, 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 twice as large. That said, I'm just going to do the change once again now to the ISO drawing, the ISO line, ISO drawing in red. And I'm going to start basically thinking about the bounding box. If we go ahead and start with the bounding box is in all of these is 8, 2, 3, 4, 5 up and 4 back. So that kind of sense of, I'll go ahead and just draw the 5 up right now. L line. If I got the polar snap on, I can go up here and I'm going to go 4 up. Now realistically, I want to go ahead and get that layer set up that it is not drawing on a center line, but it is drawing on a continuous line. So I'm going to hit there, close that out, and now watch when I say line here from the end point. You notice how it's going to find these lines that we say we're going 8 back, and I'm doing, you start to realize here, line from the end point here, it's going, you see how it's grabbing that. I take my hand off the mouse and saying 4. Now I can do a lot of copying. Left click spacebar, C for copy to the end point. And in all reality, I could actually do mirroring. So I could go left click spacebar, 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 C for copy. Second point on the mirror line is end point there. And there we have it. Now left click spacebar, in this case to the end point there. Don't forget, sometimes you can just get rid of your box once you have the piece. Generally thereafter, the box is there for visual. Fillet radius 0, fillet radius there and there. Left click spacebar, C for copy to the end point there. Left click spacebar, C for copy to the end point there, to the end point there, and in the end, left click spacebar. Remember, I'm going to point out here one more time that the problem, left click spacebar, C for copy. The problem with this is, in fact, it is not in 3D. When I type V point here, it's putting myself at a direction that is coming from 1 in the X, 1 in the Y, and 1 in the Z, looking back at 0, 0, 0, and you see there that's just not 3D, it's just fake 3D. So it's great to do by hand, but in all reality you're going to want to do something different. Now let's think about what's happening in this drawing 8-4. 1, 2, 3 to the left here. So I'm going to copy this here from the endpoint there. Again, that polar snap 3 this direction. We get to that point here. And in this, we went already 1 back this way. We're going to copy this from here, from the endpoint here. Again, because we have that generally polar snap 1 degree there, that means that we can go ahead and do a line from the endpoint there to the endpoint there. And that's one of these lines that does not read true. And we can copy that up here. And it's not going to be up, but we're going to go ahead and bring that up 1, 2. So we're going to take here left click, space bar, C for copy. As we move up, bring it up 2. That in fact is as far as that goes, so we can then trim this out. Again, this is mostly therapy. We've gotten those 2 done, and then in fact the rest of this becomes flat. So as we go through here, we can offset a line through this point, through the end point there, finish out that piece, extends through that, push that out, trim that out. Okay, this is good therapy, and anyone who wants to kind of go through this, you'll be welcome to in class. Now, that sense that this going all the way up and now offsetting 2 here, we need to get rid of this piece up on top, and we can now copy this. Again, watch how you're sliding kind of along those values 2 in that direction. We trot that 2, and that of course means that we're going to have this line from the end point there to the end point there. Kind of brought that in, and now again we should be able to do a line from the end point there, and this should be 2 going up, and it should match right in there. Trimming out. So we've kind of got that piece that goes to there, that goes up, and then we've got 1, 2, 3. So line from the end point here. Also, I want to point out that this is much better done. You don't need to use those snaps. That's, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to call them a crutch, but they just sometimes are just a pain in the butt. We don't want to do that, but we do want to trim that. Okay, we've got this coming 3, and then of course 1, 2, 3. We got 5. So we're going to copy this from here, from the end point here, and then direction 5. That's the end of that. That one comes up 1. Line from the end point there, going up 1. Then of course these are the lines that are not parallel, if you would, to our 3 major isometric lines, so they're not necessarily true, but any of the places where they do meet with those planes are true. Copy here from the end point. We're going to take that out. We're doing what? 2 to that direction, that's there, and then a line from the end point here to the end point there. You're almost there. This is gone. This is gone. As we go here underneath, this is going to have a line going across. Line from the, we can just kind of copy this one out. Left click space bar to the end point there. We forgot to do the copy. Left click space bar, C for copy to the end point. Oh, I drone on. Again, kind of nice therapy every now and then. That one, you get rid of that, come that through. Now you can just take a line from the end point of that in this direction 1. We're going to trim this out. Erase this out. Undo trim, because you did need to keep that line there. And what you're left with about now is realizing how much work that is to do an isometric. So a line from the end point there to the end point there, and then of course a line from the end point there to the end point there. Alright, so that's how you can draft an isometric. We're losing one line, if you would. Line, And we'll run it just from the end point there to the end point there. When we look at how we can do this then in 3D, and what we're going to start with is turning it down so we can make these projections from this isometric. Once again, pointing out if you can draft it like this in a former class, that you can scan it, come over the top of it, and do these twists, if you would, about these angles to get them from those isometric lines to the orthographic lines. So that is problem 8-4, drafted isometrically, which you do not have to do, but it's kind of fun to give it a try, at least by hand. Thanks for listening.